I see we're all fans of mutants here. Well, here are some more folks that have powers that I don't think you should underestimate if you know what's good for you. One of Marvel's most prominent young X-Men is Genesis, the clone of one of the team's greatest enemies. Being a clone of Apocalypse has total control over the molecular structure of his own body, enabling this little guy to alter his form at will. He's able to transform his limbs into various weapons and equipment, such as a lot of sharp things and things you can bludgeon with for combat. You can also get like rocket boots for flight. Speaking of transformative powers, he's able to alter his body to change in size. He can become extremely malleable, like he can elongate his limbs to lengths similar to Mr. Fantastic. Genesis can regenerate from serious injury. Remember when he got gashed by Daken's claws? Also, he can adjust his body to apparently any disease or environment at will, and sometimes subconsciously. So he was given an inkling of his parental figure's celestial force to strengthen their bond as father and son, and his control over such is not to the level of his donor, but he can utilize it to a marginal extent, beyond just defensive batteries. At the end of the day, Evan has the potential for virtually any conceivable superhuman power, having once showcased fire or plasma breath. So where is he now? What are we doing with him? Well, in New Mutants they did mention that he wasn't resurrected, because at the time, no, we don't resurrect clones. However, that same storyline saw the Five object and just start resurrecting clones with unique identities. So they were like, yeah, we brought back Gabby Kinney, Scout, Honey Badger. And the Five did mention Evan by name and their reasons for doing these resurrections. So is he coming back? Maybe? Possibly. I think he should. Elixir might not be as popular or well known as favorites like Wolverine and Beast, but he doesn't really mind. Technically, he's way more powerful than either of them. The Omega level mutant has the ability to heal just about any condition while in his golden form, both in himself and in others. He even has the ability to cure the devastating anti-mutant legacy virus. He can also cause painful boils, crazy tumors. He can also kill somebody by touching them, which, it's okay, I don't need a hug. Banshee is one of the older X-Men, both in terms of his age and when he was introduced in the comics. And he has the ability to fly and unleash punishing sonic screams that can disable his enemy's hearing. And once again, when turned up to an 11, his scream can flat out liquefy you. Along with Thunderbird, Sean Cassidy was one of the first of the all-new, all-different X-Men. Although he had technically earlier encountered the team as a villain, but he was too much of a sweetheart to remain a villain for long, and eventually joined the team, turning on and helping to fight his cousin, Black Tom Cassidy, and his pal, the Juggernaut. Sean was somewhat depowered here and there, but remained an important member of the X family, spending much of his time with Moira McTaggart on Moira Island. Also, his daughter Siren eventually joined the fold, after a start in supervillainy of course, because like father, like daughter. One of the few positively portrayed Muslim characters in the comic book world, Dust is a young woman with the mutant power to turn into sand, which at the beginning you're like, okay, what does sand do? Well, let's see. She can turn into a sandstorm and then scrape all the flesh from her enemies' bodies. Yeah, I don't want to underestimate that. A number of superheroes have the ability to teleport through space, so that's not what makes magic special. No, what makes her special is the ability to teleport through both time and space. And her powers as a sorceress. Oh, and her magic armor, and her ability to form psionic shields, and her creation of the soul sword. I could go on and on forever, but I think I've made my point. A relatively more recent addition to the Uncanny X-Men, Oya has the ability to manipulate the flow of heat, which means she can create fire in one place while simultaneously creating ice in another, with one of her eyes glowing ice blue and the other glowing fire orange. Sadly, the first time she uses her powers, her village burns down, so as a result, she is branded as a witch, her family is killed, and being a strongly religious character, she believes she's a monster, that her powers are blasphemy. But they're absolutely incredible, and accidents happen. While we don't know too much about Sage's true origins, and I want to know more, we do know a lot about her incredible powers. Simply put, she is a super genius, with a brain more powerful than any computer in the world. She can come up with the perfect plan in an instant, learn just about any skill, and engage in telepathy. She can even read another mutant's genetic code, and at great personal risk, allow her body to evolve similarly. Like, that is so cool. Eva Bell is also a fairly new addition to the greater X-Men universe. She made her first appearance in the all-new X-Men in 2013. She was arguably the most fascinating new mutant created by Brian Michael Bendis during his time writing X-Men books. She had all the trappings of the typical manic pixie dream girl. She was smart, snarky, beautiful, into cool music. And while her power set was not clearly defined when Cyclops first appeared to recruit her for his new team, she would later surprise readers and her fellow teammates. The time-traveling Eva Bell is one of the most powerful mutants the X-Men have ever encountered. Taking up the codename Tempest, Eva utilizes her mutant power of chronokinesis, the ability to create time bubbles and travel through timelines and alternate realities in an almost Omega level capacity. During a two-part story arc in the pages of Uncanny X-Men Annual 1 and All New X-Men Annual 1, Eva travels through different timelines, meeting the team from the series X-Men 2099, the Rawhide Kid, and a myriad of other characters who operate outside and within Marvel's main Earth 616 timeline. Eva goes on to experience years while in this time shift, going as far as to fall in love and give birth before finding herself back at the point from where she began her journey. Like, for most characters, all this power would have driven them mad, but Tempest only grew stronger. Monet, Yvette, Clarice, Maria, Therese, Saint Croix, that's a mouthful, or M for short, comes from an extremely wealthy aristocratic family, if you couldn't tell, and doesn't really have a lot of chill when it comes to wearing this fact on her sleeve, like literally. She loves designer brands, she's gorgeous, she's like a model, but don't let that whole appearance fool you. She is one of the most physically strong X-Men. She possesses superhuman speed, strength, reflexes, vision, and hearing. She's also got supersonic flight, telekinesis, telepathy, healing. Oh, and by the way, genius level intellect. Basically, she is almost perfect in every conceivable way, kind of like Mary Poppins. She is as close to a Superman that the X-Men have. Granted, this near perfection is not without faults, but those faults make her so tough. She's got some siblings and they're not so beautiful or well put together. As a matter of fact, her brother Marius is kind of like her biggest foil. During the criminally underrated run on Generation X, M merged with her brother as M-Plate, but after a confrontation, M was able to escape her parasitic brother's grasp and return to her old self. So the battle pretty much solidified that there may not be another villain that could give her a run for her money, which makes her an incredible superhero. Poor Doug Ramsey never stood a chance. As the mutant Cypher, he was often cited as the least popular member of the New Mutants. Artists hated to draw him because his power was just understanding and translating any language. Clever writers did use this to great effect, especially as Cypher became more involved, but the fandom at large really was like, he's C-list, unless he's merged with his alien buddy, Warlock. When it came to combat, there wasn't much for him to do other than to take cover and hope his teammates kept everything at bay. Unless the New Mutants were battling a group of experts during trivia night, Doug wasn't really much use. Eventually, after a decent amount of fan and creator outcry, Cypher met his demise in New Mutants issue 60, but that wasn't the end for this human Rosetta Stone. During the Necroshade storyline, it got to the point where Doug was actually resurrected through the transmode virus and had a better understanding of his mutant power, despite being dead for a couple of decades. So when Doug arrives at the doorstep of his old New Mutant teammates, he's met with a mix of open arms and trepidation. The reunion is brief and anything but sweet, and he takes out his entire team in hand-to-hand combat. Turns out that aside from spoken and written language, Doug can read body language, and then he uses this to turn the attacks of his former teammates against them. Basically, he fights like Neo from the Matrix, and it looks so cool, and also like, it's okay, I like you, I've always liked you.
Prodigy is a newer character who also happened to be one of the newest recruits to the main X-Men team at the last Hellfire Gala. Yeah, that didn't work out so well. He made his first appearance back in the 2003 New Mutants series in issue number 4, and would go on to join up with the new X-Men, become a leader for the younger X-Men on Utopia, serve as a member of the Young Avengers, and eventually come back around to Krakoa, serving as a member of X-Factor before eventually getting elected to join the X-Men, just in time for the roster to be brutally destroyed. Prodigy is known as David Lane. He is cool, but honestly pretty squishy. His mutant powers allow him to subconsciously absorb the knowledge and skills of those around him while they are in his vicinity. He did, however, gain back past knowledge he'd had at one point thanks to the Stepford Cuckoos, which ended up elevating him to super genius status, putting him on a similar level to some of the most brilliant minds in all of the Marvel Universe. Who do you think is the smartest person in the Marvel Universe, by the way? Let us know down in the comments. Also, stick around to the end of this video because I got a crazy thing I'm gonna tell you about. It's crazy, trust me. Most people would never think of Miss Marvel inherently when they think of X-Men. Until, maybe, now that is. Kamala was recently made an Inhuman and mutant hybrid in the comics, where after her death and resurrection, it was established that she possessed an X gene kind of long dormant, which had now been activated by her resurrection. Some folks were not fans of this change, but honestly, it is oddly more in line with the creators of the character's wishes for her when they made her. Initially, Kamala was designed with the origin of mutant in mind, but as Marvel did not have the rights for X-Men at that time, they instead wanted to make her an Inhuman as part of a push to make, the Inhumans as popular, if not more so, than the mutants. And with Kamala being established as the first mutant in the MCU, Marvel decided to change her origin in the comics as well. As such, Kamala also recently joined up with the X-Men, eager to see what her mutant power set would be when it manifested, but also struggling to process the hate that mutants deal with on a daily basis. Rasputin 4 is an interesting mutant who actually has had 2 different first appearances, but both of them were pretty recent. Technically, these were different versions of the same character though. Rasputin initially appeared during Moira McTaggart's 9th life, but also appears during Sins of Sinister in an alternate timeline created by Sinister using Moira's mutant powers. While in the 9th life of Moira back in the Dawn of X days, Rasputin ends up dying, the version who exists in Sinister's created timeline from Sins of Sinister actually makes her way to Earth 616 and ends up in the main continuity, teaming up with the X-Men there. Rasputin is a chimera who is created by Sinister and who possesses as such the combined powers, abilities, and genes of Colossus, Quentin Quire's Kid Omega, Unis the Untouchable, Kitty Pryde, and Laura Kinney, aka Talon or Wolverine, whichever you prefer. Armor is the main character of the Ultimate X-Men series. She is known there simply as Hisako Ichiki, the same name as Armor's in the mainline comics. At the beginning of the series, she is set to graduate middle school, but we learn that she has not been attending class in the lead up to her graduation due to the sudden loss of her friend Tsubasa. Tsubasa was mistreated by the other students and struggled in school as a result. However, Hisako did not really know just how haunted Tsubasa was by this and was surprised when it was revealed that he'd later taken his own life. From this dark beginning, we are launched into the series and follow along with Hisako, who pulls on the thread of the origins of the mysterious being who appears to claim to avenge Tsubasa, known as Shadow or the Shadow, likely a version of the Shadow King, all while uncovering that Hisako herself has her own secret. She seems to be a mutant with superpowers that she struggles to understand and also struggles to control. Storm may have been around for a good long while in the comics, but this version of the character is completely new. She made her first appearance earlier this year in Ultimate Black Panther in issue number 1. Here, Aurora Monroe is a mutant with power over the elements known as Wind Rider. She fights against Khonshu and Ra alongside her partner and her lover, Killmonger. However, while Wind Rider is with Killmonger here, there is a prophecy involving her that tells of her destiny to deliver the heir to Wakanda seemingly alongside the King T'Challa. So we'll have to see how that goes. May Storm is my favorite, I think, of the new Ultimate X-Men characters. May Storm is clearly inspired by Storm, but really does seem to be her own character. She actually first appeared as one of the new Champions variant covers that we got, appearing on the cover of X-Men issue number 27, where she was drawn and designed by Peach Momoko. As part of that project, May was created to basically be a Storm protege. All the variants were designed as such, with younger takes on characters being showcased, so we can imagine what sort of sidekick for said character would be like. I think that's what I like most about May. While inspired by Storm, she also feels fully original in terms of her characterization, and is a very different person from the original Storm from the comics. Doubly so in May's case, who exists in the same universe as Ultimate Earth 6160 Storm, aka Wind Rider, but who, like I said, I just feel very different. When it comes to Ultimate X-Men issue number 3, we actually get to meet a few new and exciting characters. Chiefly among the new mutants that we're meeting here are a group who also seem to be mutants, but who are not connected to May Storm or even to Armor. Other than the fact that, I guess, well, they all happen to be in the same class. I wonder if also them being in the same class is by someone's design. Among this group is Mori. Mori is believed to be a mutant, but it's still very early days in terms of the mystery of her character and that of Ultimate X-Men in general, to be honest. When it comes to Mori, she appears to be an alternate version of Molly Hayes, which would make sense considering some of the other characters featured here and their mainline connection to the Runaways team. In the main continuity, Molly's mutant power is that she has super strength, and she's actually considered even to be one of the strongest characters in Marvel. With Mori, we're not as certain of her powers or if she's really even an alternate version of Molly just yet, but of course time will tell. If she is Molly, I gotta say, I am loving the Runaways inspiration that seems to be kind of mixed in throughout here. For some reason, Natsu gives me Kitty Pryde vibes, but it's actually believed that she might be an alternate to Scott Summers' Cyclops in the Ultimate X-Men series and universe of Earth 6160. People suspect this of Natsu because of her name, which means summer, as in, summers perhaps, and because she has one red eye, which is concealed by an eye patch. Some have also compared her character design to that of Scott's, seeing some similarities and cues even in the tracksuit that she wears here, which people are likening to Scott's look. Natsu just made her first appearance, so we'll have to wait and see what role she will play in this very different X-Men series and team. This is a really interesting one. Nico Minoru of Earth 6160 makes her first appearance in Ultimate X-Men issue number 3, and seems to vary quite a bit from her Earth 616 main continuity counterpart, while also bearing some similarities there. Now in the main line, Nico is known for being a human who was born into a family of dark magic users who regularly performed ritual sacrifices. She ends up joining up with the Runaways and decides to rebel against her parents' plans for her, instead becoming a hero and force for good. In Ultimate, however, she instead seems to be another mutant who can detect others. At least that's what seems to be implied here. She also seems to have a magical air about her, and it's rumored that her parents are also tied to the supernatural in some way. So it's possible this version of Nico could be a magic user and a mutant as well. I mean, it definitely feels like it's a variation on the character. What's so interesting about Surge in Ultimate X-Men is that we don't really know what her motivation is or who she is working for yet, if anyone. She might just be doing her own thing. All we know is that Surge in this reality seems to be interested in exposing mutants, or at least one mutant out there in particular, and that is Hisako, who we know better in terms of her main continuity counterpart as Armor. That being said, it seems that Surge herself is a mutant, likely inspired by the mutant of the same name in the comics. Like her 616 counterpart, she seems to be able to harness the power of electricity, but unlike her 616 counterpart, this version of Surge seems to kind of have a better initial handle on her powers, not seemingly needing the gauntlets we're used to seeing her with in regards to her 616 version. I honestly can't wait to see what else we can learn about Surge as time goes on, and if she herself will get her own issue focused solely on her, kinda like how we had with May as well. We often associate the X-Men with Earth. They might not always feel at home on the planet, but they are from there. But did you know that not all mutants in the comics or even on the X-Men team come from Earth? Welcome back, Nerd Squad. It's me, Amanda McKnight, aka VampX13, and today I'm here to talk to you about one of my favorite topics, mutants. Join me as we count down the top 10 most powerful mutants not from Earth. What place would you most want to see some new mutants hailing from? Let us know in the comments. Number 10. Jillian. Jillian was one of the members of Azazel's team of Neophem, demonic mutants who were trying to escape the hellish brimstone dimension alongside him. Her powers include flight and agility, making her a pretty perfect match for the X-Men's Angel. While Azazel's army was defeated by the X-Men and thereby remained trapped in the brimstone dimension, at least Jillian managed to survive the battle. Many of Azazel's other companions died in that fight. During that feud, Jillian also let slip that she had a thing for Nightcrawler, but unfortunately for her, Kurt didn't seem too interested. Probably because of the whole evil thing, to be honest, you know? Also, to be real, she kinda looks like she could be a sister, I'm just being honest. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point it was revealed that Jillian had also been Azazel's child. We'll probably never see her again, but if we did, I wouldn't be surprised. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that subscribe button? Seriously, it helps us out, it feeds the algorithm, and then you don't get to miss out on any good nerdy content. Number 9. Helverine. Wolverine was once known by another name, or at least his body was, that of Helverine. When Wolverine's soul was trapped in Hell by Mystique and the Red Right Hand, a demon using Wolverine's body as a vessel hitched a ride to Earth through it. This demon-possessed version of Wolverine wreaked havoc on Earth while Wolverine was gone, killing anyone who got in his way and targeting many of Wolverine's family and friends when it came to whom he decided to attack. Wolverine would eventually regain control over his body after battling his way out of Hell and dealing with the demons that resided within his own mind. Number 8. Solemn. Solemn is actually one of my favorite of the new mutants we've gotten. He was created to act as a foil to Wolverine. Where Wolverine has an adamantium coated skeleton, Solemn instead has adamantium skin. Although to be clear, Wolverine's adamantium is not innate, but Solemn's is connected to his mutant powers. It is innate. I also think of Solemn as a sort of replacement for Daken when it comes to how he lives his life and how he enjoys tormenting and messing with Wolverine. He's an ally who will always pretty much stab you in the back. And though he isn't related to Wolverine, I do feel like he has a similar look to his son Daken as well. And I love it when Akihiro was bad as much as I love him now being good. So it's nice to see a character who fits a similar role but with a different approach. Solemn is one of the Arakko mutants and therefore is not considered to be from Earth originally. Technically not anymore because, you know, Arakko became Mars, became Arakko, and that was a whole thing that happened. Number 7. Brew. Brew is possibly one of my favorite alien mutants to have ever existed. He is very much an alien mutant in every sense of that term. Brew is a member of the Brood race, hence his name, but is unique in that he doesn't have the same instincts as other Brood. Where other Brood are actually genetically predisposed to enjoy inflicting pain on others and don't possess the ability to show empathy, Brew does. This made him a mutant. More recently, he became an even more powerful ally to the X-Men and a former member of the team when he devoured the Kree's King Egg, which was basically created to control the Brood. In so doing, Brew became the new King of the Brood. Number 6. Xandra Naramani. Xandra is the daughter of Professor Charles Xavier and Lilandra Naramani. She is probably one of the most powerful folks on our list, to be honest with you, considering she is not only an extremely gifted telepath like her father, but she also inherited the whole of the Shi'ar Empire, thanks to her birthright through her mother, Magistrax Lilandra. Xandra was actually conceived after the seeming death of both of her parents. She was created from their genetic materials and ended up hatching from an egg. Even back then, before the egg could hatch, people acknowledged how powerful this child would be. Many attempted to take the egg from Gambit and Rogue, who were charged with the egg's protection. In the end, the egg hatched and Xandra was born, searching Gambit and Rogue's minds for memories of her parents and choosing the name Xandra for herself. Number 5. Tarn the Uncaring. Tarn the Uncaring was a pretty important and powerful Iraqi mutant. Like so many others on the island, Tarn, who was also a member of the Great Ring of Araco, moved with the rest to Mars after it was terraformed. Tarn was also known as a major antagonist in the comics, especially in the recent X-Men Red series where he played adversary to Storm. But Tarn also showed up in Hellions where he ended up as an enemy of the Hellions, or rather they ended up as an enemy of his, after being tricked by their leader Mr. Sinister into stealing genetic samples from Tarn and his Locust Vial, which obviously Tarn did not take too kindly to. Although honestly I feel like if Tarn had just stumbled upon Mr. Sinister and nothing bad had happened, he'd probably still attack him. Number 4. Storm. I know what you might be thinking. Wait a minute. What? Storm is from Earth. What are you talking about, Amanda? Well, not anymore, although initially yes she was. Technically Storm is both from Earth and not from Earth, as until recently she was a citizen of Krakoa and of planet Araco, formerly known as Mars in the comics. If you haven't been around for a while, you might not know just how much hype Storm has been getting in the comics, and hype rightfully deserved, I must say, in my opinion. One of the significant shifts we've seen for her character was when she became the Regent of Mars, aka planet Araco. This isn't just a title that was given to Storm either, she actually had to fight for that title. And fight and win she did. She fought against Nameless, a member of the Great Ring of Araco and known as the Shapeshifter Queen, in a trial by combat, and guess what? She won. She has since stepped down from the role as Regent, but it cemented her place as a fellow New Araco affiliated mutant, hence why she's on this list. That's my story and I'm sticking to it. Number 3. Vulcan. Vulcan is one of the most powerful mutants around, being an Omega level mutant skilled in energy manipulation and absorption, yet despite his insane power levels, he tends to somehow be the lesser known of all of the Summers. He has also demonstrated the ability to absorb his opponent's powers as well and use them for himself on rare occasion. Vulcan is the youngest Summers brother, also known as Gabriel or Gabe Summers, and we only learned of his existence in 2006 when he first appeared in the comic X-Men Deadly Genesis issue number 1. Yet he is considered the most powerful of the 3 brothers. Despite him technically being an Earthling or a Terran if you prefer, Vulcan mainly grew up in space, and in fact mainly grew up in kind of like a stasis, accelerated, growing up aging pod, where his aging was accelerated until the point of peak adolescence. He did come to Earth for a short while, only to blast off to space again, however, and once again remain in a kind of stasis until the power surge from M-Day woke him up. And then he was not very happy. He was pissed. He was so upset when he woke up. Number 2. Iska the Unbeaten. Iska is truly invincible. Even the closest I have ever seen to her being beaten, she wasn't really defeated. She still won that battle. Thanks to her mutant powers, the only way she can be beaten is if by her winning, she would also lose. Sound confusing? Let me explain. Following the events of AXE and the invasion of the Eternal Uranos, who destroyed much of the planet and many of its mutant population, ended up challenging Iska to a battle of understanding. The Fisher King did this as a way of getting back at Iska, the traitor who had turned on her own people in the past and again when Uranos first attacked. And so, to beat her in his own way, knowing that he wouldn't win, he challenged her to a battle of understanding, where the winner is the one who most truly understands the meaning of loss. As you can imagine, Iska won, but at a cost. By winning, Iska was forced to feel immense grief over all that she had lost as a result of always having to be on the winning side, as per her powers. This prompted her to give up her seat on the Great Ring and seemingly leave Araco. It's a clever bit of writing, and also served as a way to write her out for a bit, because writing a character that always wins, I'm sure that is not easy to do and to do well. Number 1. Apocalypse. Apocalypse is a weird mutant to think of as not being from Earth, considering his history so closely ties him to that of ancient Egypt, but it's true. In reality, it's believed that Apocalypse actually came from Araco, which, while initially was kind of a part of Earth, would end up getting sealed away in Otherworld for a time, caught in kind of like a constant war, only to later be liberated and then moved to Mars, since the Araco mutants were too troublesome to be kept on Earth's surface and didn't get along as well with the mutants based on Krakoa. So in a weird way, Apocalypse is not from Earth, even though he also kinda is. Also, I know it might seem weird that I'm putting Apocalypse above Iska, whose mutant power is, to never lose, but I do feel like Apocalypse, knowing her better than most due to him being married to Iska's sister, might help him to defeat her, as the Fisher King did in a roundabout way by letting her win. I wouldn't be surprised if Apocalypse had a similar trick up his sleeve when it came to dealing with Iska should he have to. Number 10. Tempest. Eva Bell first made her appearance in All New X-Men issue number 1 in 2013. She could be viewed as one of the most useful of the New Mutants to surface in the past decade, because her abilities are so based in something that the X-Men and mutants and, well, sort of all of Marvel seem to get involved with more often these days: time travel. Tempest has chronokinesis powers, which allow her to alter the way time moves around her in the area she is in, and allow her to create time bubbles which she can send through time for a short while, and even time travel fully herself. She has been referred to as near Omega level, and honestly, with a bit more control over her powers, I could see her making the Omega list any day. Tempest is also one of the House of X's The Five, and helps to bring deceased mutants back to life by speeding up the growth process within their eggs. It sounds creepy when I say it like that, but more will be explained. Number 9. Morph. I really like this mutant because with him they found a way to make shapeshifting abilities unique again, and somehow make them even weirder and cooler at the same time. Morph, aka Benjamin Deeds, is able to shapeshift into those he spends time with, slowly, over time. So the more time he spends with you, the more he starts to resemble you. He really is the embodiment of what it feels like to live in somebody else's shoes. As he fuses with you, he takes on your look, your voice, and also exudes an energy that encourages you to trust him, to feel relaxed and calm in his presence. I just think this is such a cute way to imagine shapeshifting, and a useful way to use it as well, potentially calming your target into submission as opposed to causing them harm. It's kinda like the anti-mystique of shapeshifting, I think. Number 8. Goldballs. Goldballs recently became a very important mutant in the comics. He is part of a group known simply as The Five on Krakoa. Together he and Proteus, Elixir, Hope Summers, and Eva Bell can help to bring forth new life, or well, sort of old life really. They are able to resurrect any mutants who have been lost by cloning them, and with the help of X, restoring their previous memories so that in essence, they kind of are the lost mutant returned. Goldballs' power is similar to Minoru Mineta of My Hero Academia. Instead, however, Fabio Medina produces gold balls, hence his name. Originally these were simply seen as balls of various sizes which could be launched in a sort of an attack mode. Later it was discovered that they were actually infertile eggs, and with the help of the Five would become the home of unborn resurrected mutants who had fallen. Goldballs made his first appearance in Uncanny X-Men Volume 3, issue number 1. Number 7. Ellie Camacho. Eleanor is the daughter of Deadpool and Carmelita Karma Camacho. That's right, Deadpool is a daughter, if you can believe it. Carmelita and Deadpool were being held hostage together, and fearing that she would die, Carmelita decided she wanted her last acts to be those of love. Her and Deadpool were rescued right in the middle of this act of love, but he still managed to get her pregnant. She initially raised baby Ellie on her own, but did track down Deadpool to at least get him to recognize his daughter and take some responsibility. That was during the time that he was actually working for Butler and constantly having his mind wiped. Butler saw the child as an opportunity, and before Deadpool could scare off Carmelita and baby Ellie, took a blood sample from the baby. This happened in Deadpool Volume 3, issue 34 out of 2013. And in this issue we learned that the results of that blood test proved that Ellie had an active X gene, meaning she was a mutant who would one day grow up to manifest powers. We don't know what they are yet, but I'm sure they're gonna be amazing! Also, she's a mutant, so cool. Number 6. Nature Girl. Nature Girl was given her name by Eye-Boy. The two mutants also went on a bit of an adventure together while babysitting Jubilee's adopted son, Shogo. And the two were both a part of Jubilee's team of mutants to train at Kitty Pryde's Xavier Institute for Mutant Education and Outreach in Central Park. They are also really cute together, with Eye-Boy being covered in eyes and Lynn with her little antlers being a master of nature. Lynn Lee, aka Nature Girl's powers consist of an ability to bend nature to her will and communicate with it. She is able to soothe beasts, can control the elements, and can even heal nature. Truly the mutant we could all use right now, am I right? Come on, heal this terrible Earth that we have destroyed. Lynn Lee was also a student at the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning. Number 5. Matthew Malloy. One of the most powerful mutants who kinda no longer exists. But he could still exist, I guess, if writers decided to bring him back. He was basically written out of existence when Tempest went back in time and prevented his parents from ever meeting, meaning he was never conceived and therefore did not exist in present day. This had to happen because Malloy proved too strong and unstable, with his powers being strongly linked to his emotions. He emitted a blast of energy that ended up destroying most of Atlanta. He also has strong reality warping powers, telekinesis, and telepathy. He could also even manipulate matter. It was even suggested that he was beyond Omega level in the comics, so although writers have written him out, I wouldn't be surprised at his power level if he didn't find a way to return to the comics. He didn't even make it to 10 issues in Uncanny X-Men Volume 3. Still, he demonstrated such power that I feel he's really worth mentioning. You know, we might see him again someday. Who knows? Number 4. Sapna. While Sapna may have only existed in corporal form for only a short time in the comics, it's possible she could actually live on forever in Magic's Soul Sword. Sapna was a young mutant girl who appeared to have magical powers at first. This intrigued Magic, who wanted to know the extent of the young mutant's powers, and so took her to see Doctor Strange. It turned out that she actually had language-based powers, but because her powers manifested while she was in limbo, this caused her to absorb all of the magical and demonic knowledge of that realm, meaning that she could control demons and open gateways to other realms and dimensions. Magic was attempting to train her when Sapna had visions of doing harm to Magic, and that made her run away. The being that offered her help only wanted to use her, and Magic was forced to kill Sapna with her soul sword. However, this also preserved Sapna's soul within it, allowing her to live on in spirit, sort of. So she's like dead, but she's in her soul sword, so, you know. Lives on in a sword. Sounds boring. Number 3. Bailey Hoskins. Bailey is a mutant I wish we got to see more of. He is the star of the one-off, non-canon comic series X-Men Worst X-Man Ever. I say non-canon lightly because this is Marvel we're talking about, so everything is kind of canon, just living in an alternate reality. Bailey currently resides in a reality which isn't really quite established, temporarily suggested to be the alternate reality of 656, a placeholder for now. Bailey's mutant ability is self-detonation, which he can regrettably only use once, as he has no resurrection or healing powers to protect him. While you might think that makes him the worst X-Man ever, I would argue it is the one he chooses to use that power on and stand up against that is actually the worst in that comic series, the vile fascist mutant leader Riches. Number 2. Hindsight. While Nathaniel Carver might not appear to have the strongest power just yet, I'm certain, like most underrated powers, that with more control over his abilities, he could prove to be more useful than originally anticipated. Nathaniel, aka Hindsight, has the ability to see one's recent past upon making physical contact with them. He can also use this ability on objects, allowing him to see any psychic imprints left behind on that object, a power that Jean Grey actually also has. But one of my favorite things about Nathaniel was his fear of these powers getting in the way of a relationship that he started developing with fellow student Benji, aka Benjamin Deeds, aka Mork, who I mentioned earlier. Fortunately, love overcame fear and the two ended up together, and are admittedly adorable together. Yay! Future gay X-Men, bring them on, I'm ready. Give me all the gay X-Men. Number 1. Moira McTaggart. One amazing revelation we got from the House of X Powers of X series was the truth behind Moira McTaggart. Moira has always been painted as an ally to the X-Men, but in House of X we found out what really drew her to their cause. Although Moira has been a long-standing character in the comics, first appearing in 1975, it wasn't until recently that we discovered she was a mutant. Dun dun dun! It turns out that her power is to live her life again, allowing her to see the different outcomes of different futures and allowing her to effectively alter her own fate as well as the world's with her life choices. Her resurrection power is an odd one, and Destiny confessed to Moira that she only saw her living a maximum of 11 lives, if she played her cards right. Still, when used correctly, it would appear to be a powerful mutant ability, as you see in House of X if you read it. If you haven't read it, what are you doing? Get out of here. Number 10. Stepping Discs. While many people think of Illyana's magical abilities and her soul sword, it becomes easy to forget sometimes that while a powerful magus, she is also a mutant, and that magic itself is not her mutant ability, but rather something that she was just trained in. Her mutant powers involve teleportation. She can teleport herself and other people through space and even through time, teleporting people as far away distance-wise as another planet. Her teleportation discs, however, are connected to limbo, meaning that whenever you move through one of her teleportation portals, you must first pass blast through limbo in order to get where you're going. It's still debated as to whether or not this is an inherent part of her mutant ability or whether or not it was influenced by her time spent in limbo as a child when she was kidnapped. I like how I just keep alluding to that, but I'm not actually giving you anything else. I swear there's a point where I'm going to explain that a bit more. Number 9. Mirror Navigation System, also known as scrying. It's like Google Maps, but in a mirror. Ilyana can call up a scrying glass to help her see where she is going, what it looks like inside and out, and also use it like a map to guide her to that place. She has done this before while in limbo. It's basically like Google Maps complete with Street View. And she can even use the glass to see the history of a place, learn about how it was created or made, something Google Maps doesn't have yet, but maybe one day. You can Google it though. Could be like, who made this church? When was it made? How was it made? Number 8. Queen of Limbo. Due to Magic's connection to the Limbo dimension, she is insanely powerful there. This power comes from years and years of training to harness the Limbo energy. As such, she basically is the Queen of Limbo and is basically at god level when she is there. Limbo is also known as the Other Place. It is a magical dimension filled with demons and was originally ruled by the demon Belasco, who kidnapped Ilyana when she was just a child. She was kind of like his apprentice / adopted child / potential future love interest until she overthrew him. And it's less like the religious Limbo and more like a pocket dimension just filled with demons. To be honest, it's actually a surprise to me that she doesn't use this power more in battle. When you think about it, she could just teleport you to Limbo if you were fighting her and then just do whatever she wanted with you there later. She really doesn't even need to use her soul sword most of the time, but I guess it just makes her feel cool and she thinks she looks cooler, so sometimes she prefers it to just doing away with you in Limbo. Or teleporting you just, like off in the middle of space. That's what I would do. Number 7. Control over demons. As the ruler of Limbo, Magic has control of demons within that realm. Even Saim, a demon who was originally Belasco's servant, was converted to her side. Also, sorry if my pronunciation offends you, I don't know how to speak demon. After being sent after Magic to recapture her, she sneakily defeated Siam with magic and made him swear allegiance to her. Siam even remained loyal to her for a time before attempting to overthrow her rule of Limbo and control the domain himself. But for a time he was a very powerful ally, and even without him, Ilyana has proved how powerful the connection to the demon realm of Limbo is by summoning demons to do her bidding. Number 6. Psionic Shields. This was more of a power that was touched on in older comics and now seems to have been somewhat forgotten. It was more of a power that Magic leaned on when she wasn't as powerful with her magics or as accurate of a teleporter. She could use her psychic shields to protect herself against extremely powerful telepaths, including Charles Xavier. However, it has been shown that some of the most powerful telepaths can still get through her psionic defenses. Number 5. Eldritch Armor. This power is also one that isn't as often remembered. It comes from Ilyana's ties to Limbo actually. As ruler of Limbo, she is granted magical armor, which can be summoned simply from her using her magical abilities, although it has also been shown to be summoned simply through concentration. Typically, the more that Ilyana continues to use magic, the more that the armor will appear on her, eventually covering her whole body, but beginning to be assembled starting with her left side. It's important if you want to know all the facts about this armor. The armor, being magical, is lightweight and it protects her against magic. As time has progressed in the comics, however, her armor seems to have also come up less and appears to be less of a power, but perhaps she's also grown so strong that she feels like it is less needed, or maybe it's just been incorporated into her look and it just gets skipped over as an ability. But it's still there, we just don't really notice it. She's got her weird like little hat things. I always thought that was part of her armor. Number 4. Energy Blasts. Ilyana can focus and channel Limbo energy through herself and emit it in blast form, kinda like Cyclops but with magic. Although really, they're both creating blasts through channeling energy from another plane, so actually not that far off from Cyclops. She can generally use this energy to shock or blast opponents away. She can also emit energy blasts from her soul sword. Number 3. Astral Projection. An ability often used by telepaths. As a powerful mage, Ilyana can also leave her own body, projecting her astral self out into the world. She shares this ability with other powerful mages of the Marvelverse like Doctor Strange. Ilyana often uses this ability to scout out places while in her astral form, which usually also conceals her from detection, of course unless other telepaths or magic users happen to be around. She can also transport herself to the astral plane while projecting and battle there, like most other telepaths. Not that she's a telepath. She's not a telepath, just so you know. Number 2. Healing Fire. The cool thing about having magical abilities is that you can kinda do almost anything. For magic, this includes healing. She has in her repertoire a healing ritual or spell. When she casts it, like in New Mutants Volume 1 Issue 17, it encircles her within a pentagram of white, hot flames. These flames then engulf her body and can heal her. Ilyana herself is actually known to be skilled in both black and white magic, and her white magic knowledge actually came from an alternate version of Storm. True facts. Number 1. Can become invisible. Training with Doctor Strange made magic even more powerful. She already has all the knowledge imparted to her by alternate Storm and Belasco and all of his magical texts, so adding in the teachings of Doctor Strange has made her kind of an insane level of powerful when it comes to her magic use. At one point she used her knowledge to turn herself and a group of other supers, including mutants and some Guardians of the Galaxy members, invisible. In a gambit to buy time when her teleportation powers just couldn't quite cut it. Because if you can't teleport people somewhere, just turn them all invisible.
Number 10. Cypher. Cypher, with a Y, not to be confused with Cypher with an I, which if we're reusing names is already a pretty bad sign, has this super amazing mutant power of translation. Basically, the character can read any kind of language semi-telepathically, whether it be written, spoken, or body language. Now, that isn't to say this is without merit, and the powers of Cypher were eventually expanded upon to include being able to read body language to the point where he could read an opponent's combat language, making him an expert at fighting. And while that part is kinda cool, this was also expanded to him speaking binary. Not to mention how he can now read architectural structure, which is apparently a communicable language now. Overall, this guy's power set just seems to be vaguely defined, and overall, just kinda lame. But hey, a clerical mutant like this would be useful for city planning. Number 9. Wolfsbane. My main issue with Wolfsbane is she's just not a very interesting mutant. She's basically a glorified werewolf, which in a universe as creative as X-Men, just seems like someone wasn't trying that hard. As if that wasn't bad enough, in her lupine form, she actually gets less intelligent, so she struggles to comprehend more complex human concepts. So while she isn't incapable of understanding, her mutant ability just seems to create greater limits to her in spite of the benefits. She does get stronger, and her senses do significantly improve, as well as give her the ability to see heat sources, but ultimately, in a universe with cosmic destroyers, telepaths, and even just stronger animal-based mutants, Wolfsbane just doesn't end up standing out much. Number 8. Wallflower is basically the teen drama of X-Men, and at the end of her short soap opera-ic life, she's killed. Being a second-generation mutant, Wallflower, aka Lori Collins, received her power from her father, that power being the ability to control the emotions of others by using emitted pheromones. Her father, Sean Garrison, used that power to manipulate people, in particular, her mother Gail. Upon becoming pregnant with Lori, she became immune to his power and ended her relationship with Sean. Seeing what a monster her father was and how he'd hurt her mother, Lori isolated herself from other people. When her powers manifested, she caused an incident in which all the boys on a beach became attracted to her. This incident scared her and caused her to become even more isolated than she'd already been. When she finally arrived at the Xavier Institute, the soap opera continues, with her having a series of failed romances and using boys to make other boys jealous, causing said boys to get into fights, really just a series of episodes of the OC. And as mentioned, eventually she's killed by a sniper on the orders of William Stryker, thus ending the teen drama of Wallflower. Number 7. He's just gross. Glob Herman's just a nasty concept for a mutant. His entire body is made of bioparaffin, which means living wax. The wax is flammable, which basically means he spends a lot of time lighting himself on fire, and that's kind of it. Yeah, he's got super strength and all that, but like, the main thing is you can see through him to his organs, and his eyeballs just kind of extend out from his skull. Creative? Absolutely. Cool? Not really. He seems more like an experiment gone wrong than someone with a power. That said, he kinda reminds me of a gooey Halloween-styled Baymax in the latest volume of New Mutants. Number 6. Exceptional. Look, this isn't about whether I like the story. I actually do. And he was only on the New Mutants very briefly. I'm just saying, matter-of-factly, Exceptional, aka Bailey Hoskins, is exactly what he was designed to be. A really crappy mutant. And overall, just a really boring, annoying human being. And his power? He can explode himself. But if he explodes, he dies. Boom, that's it, he's dead, no more Bailey. And really, as far as mutant powers go, that's definitely sitting on the worst end of it. The most interesting thing about this character is just how amazingly bad his life is. But let me again reiterate, he's one of the worst, but in the best way possible, because it's intentional. The comic is called Worst X-Men Ever. It's written by Max Bemis of Say Anything, which anyone who's ever listened to him should know. He's fantastic about writing about rather miserable people. So it's completely enjoyable as a read. Just don't expect it to change your perspective on Bailey being a good mutant. he's not. Number 5. This guy's like a more visually pleasing version of Beak. The problem is, his powers are just kind of boring. He's got wings, and the wings give him a healing factor. And then his wings get cut off, and he loses everything interesting about him. I mean, I guess he still has the vocal cord powers of a lyrebird, but that's not really relevant when it comes to being on an X-Men team. And really, he's just kind of a sad character. He fell in love with a girl named Julia Cabot, whose father tried to kill him, but not being aware of his healing factor, failed to do so. However, Julia, believing he was dead, chose to drown herself with him. However, his healing factor brought him back to life and forced him to carry her lifeless corpse out of the water. Then he tried to kill himself a few times, but his healing factor kept bringing him back. Sadly, this character would eventually be killed by William Stryker as well. Number 4. Okay, Wither wins my award for being probably the dumbest mutant I have ever seen. I mean, it's honestly just infuriating. So after Scarlet Witch changed reality to take away 90% of the mutants' powers, Wither, seeing everyone declaring their powers are gone, immediately grabs Wallflower's arm to show her he can't make it decay, and then makes it decay. Like, first off, he didn't think to maybe try it on a flower or something first just to be sure, I don't know, you don't disintegrate someone's arm. But secondly, Icarus is standing right next to her with his wings. So maybe, put 2 and 2 together and figure out that maybe, just maybe, this isn't an absolute thing yet. Ugh, moron. Number 3. Okay, so a disclaimer. Admittedly, these two don't really count as New Mutants, but given they're featured prominently in the reboot, more so than some of the actual confirmed New Mutants cast, I'm gonna run with it for now. Since the way things are unfolding, I get the feeling they're gonna be pretty central to this story arc. And because they're twins, this is gonna count as 2. So this is also number 2. The creepy twins trope is kind of done to death. Making them morally ambiguous? It's been done. And I will be the first to say, I do actually enjoy the stories written around these characters, but Maxime and Manon kind of jump around from being ignorant children trying to help out and being manipulative and honestly kind of sadistic. Having most recently changed the memories of a man holding them hostage to have him murder his allies. Their hearts are in the right place, somehow. At least that's what everyone seems to believe. But they seem frustrated at the prospect of not having people murder each other. Granted, they are abused children, and surely they have a lot going in their heads, with what happened with Ahab, but I guess we'll see where they go with this storyline since it's currently ongoing in the latest volume of New Mutants, but right now, I'm not a big fan. Number 1. Honestly, Shatterstar is just boring as a mutant. That's really it. He's pretty much the embodiment of an overpowered action hero, from his Rob Liefeld design being just an overly muscular guy with a sword and a silly eye tattoo. It's really just a mishmash of exactly what stereotypes the 80s and 90s thought made someone a badass. Somehow, I'm not surprised this guy was brutally killed in Deadpool 2, and really, describing yourself as a better Deadpool and looking like that, it's not gonna win anybody over. What is that head crown even holding on to anyway?